Evening. Tonight is Wednesday, June 7th, 2023, and we're calling to order the regular meeting of the Oregon City City Commission. Next on the agenda will be the flag salute, so would you all join me in that? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Anyway, thank you, everyone. Before we get to the super exciting part of the agenda, I just wanted to take a moment and express our condolences to the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde. The Grand Ronde tribal matriarch, Catherine Harrison, recently passed on May 21st at the age of 99. Catherine was a key participant in the Grand Ronde tribe's early 1980s restoration efforts and was one of 5 tribal members who testified before the United States House of Representatives on October 18, 1983, in support of restoring the tribe to federal recognition. The tribe's federal recognition had been terminated 29 years earlier in 1954. After the tribe was restored on November 22, 1983, she continued to serve her people on the tribal council from 1984 to 2001. During her time on the council, she served as secretary, vice chair, and 6 years as tribal chairperson. She had never lost a tribal election and was the first woman ever elected. So if we could just take a moment of silence in recognition of her contribution to the Grand Ronde, to the people of the state of Oregon, and to the United States. Thank you all for that. The city will be sending something to them on our behalf to express our condolences. So on a happier note, under ceremonies and proclamations, we have the pleasure of having the oath of office for Oregon City police officers. And I'd like to turn that over to Captain Sean Davis.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Ceremonies are exciting times for us, especially this for tonight. It's a hiring and sergeant promotion. Tonight, we're going to swear in and promote a sergeant and 7 officers. This is a larger than normal swearing in ceremony because there was a conflict of interest with some schedules earlier in the year. Finding great people that want to be Oregon City police officers can be challenging, but I want everyone to know we're doing a great job in hiring really good people. Most recently, 2 of the officers that are here tonight, we're going to swear in tonight. We're given conditional officers by other agencies, and they chose, we were doing backgrounds on them, and they chose to wait, and they were hired by us. So for us, that really says a lot, and we're super proud of that. And so we'll start the ceremony and bring them up here.
Okay, well, I would like to just correct one little thing by my Captain Davis. So they did not have a conflict of interest. They had a conflict of schedule.
Conflict.
I don't think there was any conflict of interest by the officers. So unless there's something we don't know. So, all right.
Scheduling conflict. Some of them were at the academy, some were on vacation.
Yes, so that was a conflict of scheduling.
Yep.
All right.
So we can get the Sergeant Lemons and the 7 officers up front. I'm going to read a quick bio and introduce their family and friends that are here, and then we'll get them sworn in. So the first one is Sergeant Jason Lemons. Jason grew up in Oregon City. He started with Portland Police Bureau in 2009 and was hired as a lateral in 2016. Jason has been an FTO, detective, lead firearms instructor, is on the honor guard, and was promoted to sergeant in January 2023. When you think of someone that you want to come to your house, if something happens to your family that's really bad, Jason is one of the first people that you want there, right? He's caring, empathetic, thorough, and you know he'll give 110%. We are grateful he lateraled over to us, and we look forward to his continued growth as a sergeant. Spencer Main. Officer Spencer Main grew up in Oregon City and graduated from Oregon City High School. Spencer was hired on April 5th, 2022. Spencer has completed all his training, and you might see him. He's currently working graveyard. With him tonight is Ashley, his wife, his kids Evan, Malia, and Abel, his mother Kim, his father Duff, and Duff's wife Kelly. Ben Griffin grew up in Bend, is currently serves in the Army National Guard. In addition to being a police officer, Ben was hired on August 15, 2022. He graduated the academy and is in his final stage of completing his field training. Here with him tonight is Jordan and his son Abel, or his wife, Jordan, and his son Abel. Sydney Oden. Sydney grew up in Bend, has received her bachelor's degree from PSU. Sydney was hired on August 29th, 2022. She also graduated with Ben from the academy and is in her final stage of completing her field training. Here with her tonight is her fiance, Colton. He's also a Clackamas County deputy. August Kelly-Musich. August grew up in Oregon City and graduated from Oregon City High School. He currently serves in the Army National Guard. He was hired April 3rd, 2023, and he started his field training already and is scheduled to go to the academy in August. Here with him tonight is his girlfriend, Allison. We have Austin Davis, who grew up in Corbett and has a bachelor's degree from George Fox University. Austin was hired on April 26, 2023. He started his field training, and he's going to go to the academy in September. With him tonight is his mom, Angela, his dad, Brian, his brother, Zane, and his sister, Grace. Samantha Bergland. Samantha grew up in Milwaukee and graduated from Rex Putnam High School. Samantha was hired on May 8th, 2023. She has started her field training and is scheduled to go to the academy in September. With her tonight is her significant other, Bogdan, along with his family members, Nina and Yuri, her aunt, Marla, along with Joseph, and their cousins, Josie, Wade, Todd, Kelly, Aspen, and her friend, Chris. And then finally, we have Justin J.J. Hoover. Justin grew up in Westland. We're not going to hold that against him since that's our arch rival. But he graduated from Westland High School. Justin was hired on May 9th, 2023. He started his training and is scheduled to go to the academy in October. With him tonight is his mom and dad, Michelle and Rob, brother Zach, sister Addie, aunt and uncle, Deanna and Dave. And Dave is a sheriff up in Thurston County, Washington. After he's done 36 years up there. Cousins Chad and Kayla, his mentor Brian, and family friends Doug and Rosie. That's all I have.
I know, I can't read from there either. All right, so you can just, here's your oath of office, so just read it.
I, Sergent Lemons, do solemnly swear that I will uphold the law and support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Oregon. I will abide by the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics and the department's rules and regulations while performing my duties as a police sergeant for Oregon City, Oregon.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Mayor.
No, I'm just.
All right, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
All right, so raise your right hand.
Yep. I, Benjamin Griffin, do solemnly swear that I will uphold the law and support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Oregon. I will abide by the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics and the department's rules and regulations while faithfully performing my duties as a police officer for Oregon City, Oregon.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's okay. Don't just take it on yourself. Everybody's going to sign.
I, Sydney Oden, do solemnly swear that I will uphold the law and support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Oregon. I will abide by the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics and the department's rules and regulations while faithfully performing my duties as a police officer for Oregon City, Oregon.
Congratulations. All right, raise our right hand.
I, Justin Hoover, do solemnly swear that I will uphold the law and support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Oregon. I will abide by the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics and the department's rules and regulations while faithfully performing my duties as a police officer for Oregon City, Oregon.
Congratulations.
I, Austin Davis, do solemnly swear I will uphold the law, support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Oregon. I will abide by the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics, the department's rules and regulations, while faithfully performing my duties as a police officer of Oregon City, Oregon.
Congratulations.
Ready?
Yep.
I, August Kelly, do solemnly swear that I will uphold the law and support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Oregon. I will abide by the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics and the Department's rules and regulations while faithfully performing my duties as a police officer for the Oregon City, Oregon.
Congratulations. There you go.
I, Spencer Main, do solemnly swear that I will uphold the law and support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Oregon. I will abide by the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics and the department's rules and regulations while faithfully performing my duties as a police officer for Oregon City.
Congratulations. Raise your right hand.
I, Samantha Bergland, do solemnly swear that I will uphold the law and support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Oregon. I will abide by the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics and the department's rules and regulations while faithfully performing my duties as a police officer for Oregon City, Oregon.
Congratulations. Can we get one big picture? You want one big picture? Okay. So everybody's going to sign, then we're going to do like our photo op. Can we get all the commissioners in there with all these lovely people? Can we squish? Yes, go ahead. Quick break.
I think Ben's just.
We have to be sitting in front of them.
We gotta wait for Ben.
Jared, are you getting? Safe out there. Congratulations, everybody. I'm really excited. Especially those of you on the graveyard shift. I need to drive around.
It's quite the invitation.
Yeah. All right, so if the family members want to exit, we are actually going to, Jacob will do roll call real quickly, and then I will adjourn into executive session.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Adam Marl.
Here.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Here.
Commissioner Mike Mitchell.
Here.
And Mayor Denise McGriff.
Present. Okay, so how long do we need? For the executive session?
20 minutes, 25 minutes.
Okay, well, let's just say for the heck of it, let's make it, let's say 8 o'clock.
Oh.
If we get,
I don't think the
think
public
we need
knows what we're
7:45?
talking about either, so.
oh, I know, okay. So we will we're going to adjourn and we're going to reconvene again at 7:45. So hang tight, please. We're going to be going into executive session. Patients, we're going to reconvene the city commission meetings. I told you 8 o'clock. You didn't even listen to me. So we're going to move back to the agenda. We're going to go back to item 3B. So we have a proclamation tonight that I will find in just a second. And it is in celebration of the 2023 Juneteenth event that the city is going to be sponsoring and supporting with the community. So whereas President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863, declaring that the slaves in the Confederate territory free, paving the way for passing the 13th Amendment, which formally abolished slavery in the United States of America. And whereas upon signing of the Emancipation Proclamation, it was delayed by 2.5 years to June 19, 1865, in reaching authorities and African Americans living in the South and Southwestern United States. And whereas Emancipation Day observations are held on different days in different states in the United States, and whereas June 19th has a special meaning to African Americans and is called Juneteenth, combining the words June and 19th, and has been celebrated for over 150 years. Whereas Juneteenth-centered activities have taken place to promote and cultivate knowledge and appreciation of African American history and culture, and whereas Juneteenth is a day of reflection and a day of renewal, it is a moment in time to appreciate not only the African American experience, but it is inclusive of all races, ethnicities, and nationalities. And whereas Juneteenth is a day we can come together as a community to listen, to learn, and to refresh the drive to achieve, it is a day where we can come one step closer together to better utilize the energy wasted on racism. And whereas the annual Juneteenth celebration in the city of Oregon City will be held on Saturday, June 17th at 2 p.m. on the grounds of the Oregon City Library. Now therefore, I, Denise C. McGriff, Mayor of the City of Oregon City, do declare June 19th, 2023 as Juneteenth Day in Oregon City, and urge all citizens to be more aware of the significance of this celebration in African American history and the heritage of our city and nation. And I will set my hand this day, the 7th day of June, 2023. So we will move on to the next item, which is the citizen comments. So I just want to make sure that people understand. So when we get down to the adoption of the agenda, I will be adding an item to that agenda. And so if you are here to talk about something to do with Park Place, that is not the place under item number 4. If you have something other than item number 4, I will be happy to call on you, and that might be David.
Could you check to make sure that the button is green lit up?
I gotta press the button.
There's a little push. There you go.
There we go. Okay.
Could you do your name and...
David Goldberg, Redland Road. I'm the chair of the Oregon City Library Board. First, I want to commend the city manager and management and the commission for a fair, transparent, and very welcoming budget process. The hearings invited members of the community with a wide variety of concerns to air their thoughts and requests before you. Each community member was heard and each request was fairly considered. I've sat in your shoes and I understand the difficulty of trying to meet the demands of a growing city within the limitations of your resources. You managed to create and amend the biennial budget without rancor or conflict, and it was a fine lesson in participatory democracy, and very much appreciated. As chair of the library, I want to thank you on behalf of our board. The biennial budget reversed 5 biennia of net general fund reductions of funding for our library, and you listened to our analysis and fairly agreed to an incremental increase in support. We're grateful for this and very thankful. Finally, our projections for the future funding of the library is somewhat troublesome. Without additional revenue in 6 years, we will not have the benefit of the surplus in our fund balance and will face a steep cliff of deficit. We understand that the solution to our fiscal challenges cannot solely be made up from Oregon City General Fund, and we believe we will need to go back to the Clackamas County voters for a new library ballot measure. This will likely take several years of preparation and negotiation with each of the libraries, the cities in Clackamas County, and indeed with the county government itself. We'll need the support and guidance of the Oregon City management and of you, the commission. During the coming years, we'll keep you informed of the progress toward a new ballot measure, and we look forward to working with city management and with the commission on this important endeavor. Thank you.
Bob, is your item having to do with the budget? Okay, then that is not under item number 4, because item 8A is the budget. Pardon? You wrote item number 4 on your form. Okay, so I'm changing it to 8A. Okay. Linda, is your item having to do with Park Place? Yes. Okay, then you're going to be deferred later. Okay, so we have number 5. So who is here to talk about the Oregon City Travel Behavior and Perception Survey? It's Christina, yay! All right.
Good evening, Mayor McGriff, City Commissioners. I am here tonight with Rick Williams Consulting, William Reynolds and Rick Williams, who are going to give you an overview of our 2019 and 2022 travel behavior survey, or we like to call it How We Get Downtown. This survey was paid by the Regional Transportation Options Grant, paid by Metro, and we're really thankful for that money. And we learn a lot. These travel surveys are very helpful. They're data points, they show trends, and they help decision makers when they have to make decisions about how to spend resources or approve policies downtown. So I'm going to hand it over to Rick and his team.
Thanks, Christina. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Rick Williams. I'm with Rick Williams Consulting, a parking and transportation demand management firm here in Portland. And to my right is my partner, William Reynolds, who works with us on projects like this.
Are you not hearing?
Oh, a little closer. Thank you. Is that better?
You might want to go closer.
I'll lean forward. We want to give you a little background on what is a travel behavior survey and how we got here today. Prior to COVID in 2018, you'll remember that we had completed the Oregon City Transportation and Demand Management Plan, as well as we had updated the parking plan for the downtown. We took all that information and we sat down with the TDM work group and members of DOCA and city staff, and we're engaging in a process to say we have all this information, and our goals are to accommodate more visitors downtown, increase the number of people using all modes of access into the downtown, not just parking, transit, walking, biking, and continuing to support downtown as a thriving business district. And as you remember when I presented to you last time in 2018, the parking data showed we really had some constraints in the downtown, and downtown was really beginning to boom. But when we sat down with the TDM work group and said, what are we going to do to shift travel patterns? The first question that came up from a member in the group is, we really don't know how people come to downtown now. And so as we engage in thinking about programs and strategies that we might want to implement to influence behavior and meet our transit, bike, walk, and parking goals, let's do a survey. So that's what we did in 2018. And then about the time we got it all put together, COVID hit. And things slowed down tremendously. We decided that as we completed the recently presented to you parking plan for the downtown here in 2022, we decided that seeing as how we were gathering data on parking and the potential impacts of COVID on parking in downtown, maybe we should redo the survey to see how COVID may have impacted travel behavior from that 2019 survey to 2023. So we re-implemented the data, and that's what we have here today. In round one, back in 2019, we got 709 responses to our survey. And this year, we got 555 responses to the survey. These types of surveys, I will let you know, these types of survey are qualitative and really more thematic. Think of these surveys as like a big focus group. We're asking questions of people, how they travel, their thoughts and ideas about downtown. And so that's what the purpose of this, and also to see what the changes were in travel behavior that may have been COVID-related. We gave incentives to participate in the survey. We had intercept surveys going on the street, walking up to people. We also had outreach that allowed people to use a QR code to get online and take the survey for us. The methodologies between the two surveys in both years were pretty much the same, so that we have an apples-to-apples comparison. With that, I'm going to turn it over to William now, and he can walk you through the findings of the survey.
Thanks, Rick. Thanks, Christina. Thank you, Mayor and members of the commission for having us again. And to Rick's point about the incentives to do the survey, that's always a key component of these, to get the numbers and get the number of employees and residents to respond to these types of surveys. I do just want to say a big thank you to the Oregon City Economic Development Community Showcase Program. They helped fund the survey prizes, in this case, a $25 gift certificate for restaurants downtown. Staff received numerous thank yous after those prizes were awarded. And I just want to read one email that was received. The gift certificate was the incentive, and yes, it worked. We dined and spent an additional $77 and discovered more about the verdict than we knew, and will certainly return. And afterwards, walked past Nebbiolo's and learned of their piano bar Tuesdays, which we will certainly enjoy sometime in the future. Very glad to see Oregon City downtown rebounding and offering more and more of what we like to do. Thank you for the incentive to explore. So great job by that Community Showcase program and staff to get not only an incentive to complete the survey, but an incentive to go downtown and experience downtown. So we have a full report that dives into a lot of details about every one of the 41 questions asked. Rick was actually here in 2020 giving a detailed account of all that data that we pulled in from the 2019 survey. This round, we are seeing very similar trends. The 2022 results are very similar to 2019. So we want to just highlight some of the differences this evening and talk about some of the reasons why there might be some differences, and then Rick can talk a little bit about the next steps from what we've learned here. So a key finding is that commuter patterns are similar in Oregon City pre and post-pandemic. There was only a real slight increase in remote work. We saw about 2% in 2019, up to about 5% in 2022. A lot of that is related to the employment base in downtown. Other cities have much heavier office component where you can work remotely. A lot of the employees that we were surveying are related to restaurant workers and retail workers who need to be there, who need to be coming downtown to be doing their job. So that accounts for a fairly small amount of remote work. There was a very small increase in transit usage, 3% in 2019 to 5%, not a very significant jump, and a very similar amount of vehicle usage. So overall, what we saw were that the 2019 findings were very similar to what we saw in 2022. A lot of cities have experienced significant loss of people coming into their downtowns. A lot of Portland is 30% below what they were before, just related to that remote work component, working from home. So the fact that isn't really a big impact here means that there's, we just see similar trends, and you have more bodies coming downtown to shop in restaurants. Finding number 2 is that there was a consistent mode split between years. So even though we actually reached a different population base in terms of downtown employees, there was a less of a group of courthouse represented here, but the overall trend in how people are getting downtown was very similar. And as I said, because COVID didn't have as much of an impact on how people travel in Oregon City, this was fairly consistent. There weren't a lot of other significant changes in the overall transportation environment. So what we're seeing is what you might expect, which is people people are continuing to drive at high levels and occasionally use other modes. One thing to note here, you do see very little bike activity on this chart. The survey was completed in November and December, and this is sort of looking back at the previous week. So a little bit of this is just represented by the fact that it's a little bit colder and rainier to be on a bike. When we asked it a different way and we asked, do you occasionally ride a bike? We would see about 9, 10, 11% of employees indicating that they do occasionally bike to work. And another interesting finding here is that among those who live very close to downtown, within 3 miles is how we asked the question, but you would assume it would be a little bit closer than that. But among that group that actually can walk to downtown, over 10% are doing so. So that ends up being a fairly significant proportion of people. And you'll see over the next few slides about how important walking is and the safety of the walking environment downtown really is to residents. Some people say that they do, yeah.
On those colder days, man. Just stay warm.
Not going downtown.
I'm sorry, can you go back a second? I'm confused. I must have misunderstood. I thought I heard you say that there wasn't that much of a difference in the number of trips between 2022 and the previous survey?
What we can say based on our data, as Rick said, it's somewhat qualitative data. So we're looking at the percentages of travel patterns. So we're not looking at the overall employment numbers themselves.
Okay, so at the top of this chart where it says 406 trips in 2022 and 883 in 2019, those are survey responses and
Yes.
not, okay.
Thank you for that clarity. I sort of skipped over that at the beginning. The total number of respondents was down in 2022 versus 2019, but actually, more importantly for this chart, we had about half the number of employees respond to the survey. So this data is based on around 100 employees, and in 2019, it was based on around 200 employees responding to the survey. So that's why in our sample.
So it's survey responses and not necessarily number of trips.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Why do you think we had less response from the employees? That would have been really telling to me if we'd had much higher numbers.
Interesting.
Didn't, basically.
Yeah, please.
And again, that's one of the, why we want to use this as a thematic approach. And because, again, what's always hard in surveys is we use the exact same methodology. We had incentives and the same outreach, and went to all of the businesses and people that took the survey last time. It's just, I think less people were willing to take the survey this time. But the methodologies were apples to apples.
Okay.
But that's a great question, Commissioner Mitchell. Thank you.
When I look at that, it tells me it's the great American tradition. Excuse me, to me, when I look at that, it tells me it's the great American tradition of one man, one car, that 91 to 93% of the people either are one man, one car, or maybe they include carpooling. And sometimes when I look at these transportation plans with the emphasis on bicycling, I look at those bicycling numbers, which was 0.5%, I really wonder if that's a smart allocation of those funds. So now the bicycle community can come after me.
I didn't hear the full question, Commissioner.
It wasn't a question, it was a statement
Making a
that 91 to 93% of the people are still one man, one car.
We still need to know about whether anybody's biking. That's why I asked the question about people running to work, okay, you know.
Did you see the number,
Yeah, I
0.5%
saw.
or less?
But you know, with the rise of e-bikes, I mean, I see a lot of e-bikes downtown. People cruising through with e-bikes.
And Commissioner, we didn't share it here. One of the other findings in the survey, one of the questions we asked was, what other modes do you use occasionally? And we actually found about 50% of survey respondents indicated that they do use other modes. The frequency of it is difficult to determine, but you know, as I said, about 10% indicated that they bike. 15% indicated that they walk. Others indicated that they use transit at higher levels. So it's occasional, but it is real. Carpooling being the most significant among other options that people consider besides driving alone.
But the way that question is phrased, to use other modes, it doesn't talk about the frequency with which they bike.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's really not a very informative piece of data.
So we can talk about the finding number 3 is walking in downtown is a key feature and attraction. We saw this throughout the survey, that the walking experience, which we measured on a scale of 1 to 5, asked people to respond, how do they feel about walking in downtown? And it was very consistently high among both survey years. The most common desired improvements were about improving crosswalks to get safely across the street, especially in high traffic areas where there was high speeds, ensuring clean, clear, well-lit sidewalks. These were key. It just came across again and again that people enjoy walking in downtown, and they want to continue to improve that experience to make it convenient, safe, and easy to walk around with your family.
Can I ask another question? So, kind of related to that previous slide. So if I drive my car to the top of the bluff and park, and then I take the elevator down and walk around downtown based on the survey methodology, is that a walking trip or is that a driving trip?
That would be a driving trip.
That's a driving trip, okay.
Particularly as relates to employees and their modes, but that's how we asked the question, which a lot of that mode split data is based on employees and their travel diary, indicating in the previous week how they traveled. So they could park above the bluff, they could park in downtown, but that would be considered a driving trip.
Okay, thank you.
We heard a few things on about parking itself, the desire for more long-term parking options, as well as improved payment options. So there is a desire to be able to park for longer term, particularly among employees, and there's a desire for more consistent payment options. There was some degree of frustration you came across in the comments about coin meters and difficulty of having change at some of the areas where coin meters remain. And there were several comments about just the how easy the app in particular is to use. So we just heard that a little bit through the comments among business owners in particular about wanting to make, when you're charging for parking, just make it as easy as possible for customers to do that. So there could be ways to improve the payment app or to improve some of the technology in the kiosks to make that as easy as possible.
So, you know, we did talk about that with our parking control officer and talked about see if we could change so it could be, what was your suggestion? Was
You could buy
5
as little as 3 minutes at a time.
Yeah, 3 minutes of
You
time.
can buy as little as 3 minutes at a time. And I don't know what the position is called, public information officer or whatever. He wrote an article in the news about how to effectively use those machines.
And it was a great article.
And I'm not the most literate person, and I didn't have any trouble using the thing. I mean, those new machines are an improvement.
Yeah, they're great.
Great, good to hear. Finding number 5 is that there were no measurable significant changes in the perceptions of transit and bike facilities. This question was asked in the same way that we asked the walking question on a scale of 1 to 5. What is your experience with biking in downtown, and what is your experience with transit accessing downtown? Both were found to be moderate. Definitely room for improvement among both modes. They were consistently rated about 2.9 out of 5. And as I mentioned earlier, about 48% of employees do report using alternative modes, but as you pointed out, Commissioner, that doesn't tell you how many trips per year that is. That's just a general openness to using other modes. So if there are ways to improve the bicycle service, or if there's ways to improve the transit service, or at least to provide an incentive to use them, both of those would be the ways that you might be able to shift some people who are willing to consider that mode. Obviously, there are people who need their car and want to continue to drive, and then that's their priority. Those who are open and willing to consider alternative modes are looking for an easy transit trip or an easy bike trip. So if there are ways to invest in improving that infrastructure, there are some employees who would be willing to do so, it seems.
See, and my response to that is, if I'm servicing my customers and 90+% of them use one avenue to get there, how much money do I put into improving that half a percentage point that uses this alternative? You know, I want the most bang for every dollar I spend.
Lastly, I just want to point this out. We do a lot of surveys, and it's an opportunity for people to vent. And so, you know, as we read through 200 comments, there's going to be a lot of comments about frustration with parking, general, you know, it's just an opportunity to share some difficulty in accessing downtown. So we do capture all of that, and we want to summarize all of that in the report of what are the key issues people have and what are their biggest priorities. So that's really what we do have in the detailed report. But I just wanted to highlight this because this was somewhat unique in a lot of the surveying work we do, which was that people actually went above and beyond to express how much they love Oregon City and how much they want to continue to make improvements in downtown. And it was fairly unique for me in my capacity to see the number of comments just thanking the amount of planning that has been put into downtown Oregon City and recognizing that there have been improvements. And to see that come across in just the general comments was somewhat striking to me. It's rare to see that amount of positivity coming out in an open-ended question. So it speaks well to all the work that you all are doing. With that, I'll toss it back to Rick.
Well, next steps, I think what we heard from members of the TDM subgroup or work group is they're appreciative of these themes. We know more about how people are traveling. As Commissioner O'Donnell said, there's a lot of people still traveling by car. As we go back into elements of the parking plan, we also know that we have very limited supply of on-street parking in downtown. And so that continued work on getting employees safe and affordable places to park, but without being in conflict with the visitors who are coming down on the on-street system. We learned that the idea that we presented to council with the parking study about getting an app that's flexible, unique, easy to use, that adds that extra hour so that we can get uniform time standards downtown at 2 hours, but be able to get an extra hour if I need it. All of that we feel is confirmed in particularly not just the thematic data we have, but in some of the comments that we got as well. But I think also on the TDM side, we learned that there's still work that can be done with biking, with walking. I think even with Commissioner Mitchell's comments, we've worked with other cities with more detailed trip diaries, where they actually keep a diary of their trips every day for 7 days so that we can pick up those intermittent trips that people might take. I drive 3 days a week, I bike 1 day a week or whatever. We learned that we can improve the survey the next time around. We can continue to work on the walking system. We can continue to work on bike safety and bike facilities. So I think it confirmed that there's the TDM plan is the right direction to go. Parking, walking, biking, the universe of trips for capacity. But the big next step, I think, for the group is to sift through this data, begin to work on those issues with staff, but to do this survey again about 6 months after the transition of the county into their new location, and do this survey again and take some of the comments we've heard tonight and tweak the questions a little bit more to get more information out, knowing again it's not going to be perfectly scientific. So again, work to do. I think we've confirmed a lot about the parking plan, that we're moving in the right direction. We confirmed the TDM plan is a good plan, and we need to initiate that work, and then we need to come back and resurvey, because the biggest change that's going to happen is going to be that transition. And with that, I'll turn it back to Christina for any closing comments or questions that you have of myself or William.
I just wanted to add to the comment. We had talked to our parking folks about being able to add time. And as a person who uses a number of the self-care providers downtown, those appointments take longer than 2 hours. So if you're getting certain procedures done, or you're getting your pedicure and your manicure, it's not a 2-hour deal. And it would be nice to have a little extra time, because you cannot just run out of the salon if something's going on with your hair or your feet or your hand, and even if you have the app, it's difficult. And I had an appointment this past week, and about every 2 seconds I was pulling up my phone to look to see if because I put in 2 hours, and I actually figured out how, I won't say how I did it, but I figured out how I was able to get some extra time without having to move my car. It wasn't illegal. It just told me that I needed to move my car, and I basically put in a different parking meter, which I know that several of them in the downtown. I know what their numbers are, so I plugged that in, gave myself 15 more minutes, so that I didn't have to run out with stuff on my hands.
All I can say is Booker, Danu.
I already told the chief. He already knows. I haven't told Ryan yet, but I will tell him. But yeah, it would have been extremely inconvenient to walk out of there. So I think adding, a half an hour, I don't know about an hour, but adding at least a minimum of a half an hour, because we have had a number of those folks move into, I'm amazed at the number of estheticians, nail places, facial places, whatever else they're doing in their eyelash. It has tripled since you did the survey. And those are not fast appointments. So I've heard from Live Edge, I've heard from several of the other businesses, that's an issue for them. So, thank you. Any other comments? All right, let's move on. Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
All right, so we're to number 6, and we need to make an amendment to the agenda to add an item. And so could I have a motion to add the item regarding the litigation regarding the Park Place Master Plan added to the agenda?
So moved. I would
Where would we like to
propose
put
that
it?
we put it as soon as possible for the people that had to wait for our
Yes, I understand.
executive session meeting.
Okay, so we'll move it up. We'll make it the new number 8, and we'll move everything else down to number 9. Is there any other comments? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Rocky Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Adam Marl,
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Mike Mitchell.
Aye.
And Mayor Denise McGriff.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, I'd like to have the adoption of the agenda and approval of the consent agenda. I will say I read the 2015 minutes. It was like having a flashback. But, so, adoption of the agenda and the consent agenda. Motion, please.
Just to be clear, that would be the consent agenda?
Yes, and the adoption of the agenda with the change, so. May I have a motion,
So
please?
moved.
Okay, so moved. Second?
Second.
All right. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Adam Marl.
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Mike Mitchell.
Aye.
And Mayor Denise McGriff.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, so we're adding a new number 8, so I will turn this over to, so we're going to have a brief discussion about the pending, not the pending, but the recent decision on the Park Place Master Plan that went to LUBA. So Mr. Gleisman and Mr. Conklin.
So thank you, Mayor McGriff and council, commissioners, I apologize. As you know, a couple weeks ago, LUBA made their decision on the Park Place concept plan appeal and remanded it to the city on a variety of different issues. Most importantly, one of the issues involved the whether or not the clear and objective standards essentially said that the city was obligated to apply clear and objective standards, that the option of FU10 development that was provided for in the annexation wasn't appropriate. There are a number of other issues, but one of the results is that there are significant limitations on the city's ability to implement the Park Place concept plan. In addition, the LUBA said that the city had committed procedural error by not allowing the applicant to amend its its application after the city had discussed denial, which is a relatively new provision under the statutes. And so in reviewing those errors, we think that there are some potential avenues for appeal, and wanted to have a discussion with you about whether the commission is, what steps the commission would like to take.
Okay, well, prior to us having a discussion, I'd like to call up members of the public who are here to address this particular issue. So, Jesse?
Thank you, Mayor McGriff, Commissioners. My name is Jesse Bess, resident of Oregon City, but I'm here representing the Park Place Neighborhood Association. You all know this, but for the benefit of anyone watching the meeting, PPNA joined in the LUBA litigation regarding the Park Place Master Plan and ICON's appeal, and we joined with the city in trying to defend this commission's decision denying ICON's application for development. I'm not going to try and go over LUBA's decision. It's lengthy and components of it are confusing and it's highly technical, and I know you've already heard from your attorney about some of the major issues. So I'll just skip over the legalese aspect of it and say that as a practical matter, my client's not inclined to proceed with an appeal on their own. They don't believe it would be appropriate, and frankly, it's not something that they're excited about doing without the support of the city. One of those reasons is that if this decision gets appealed to the Court of Appeals, one thing the court, I think, would look at is, well, what is the city's position on this? And if the city hasn't appealed, the city isn't pushing the issue, how does that look to the Court of Appeals? You know, it's only neighborhood association appealing and the city says, oh, it's fine. So what I'm here to do is to urge you to appeal this matter to the Court of Appeals on behalf of the city. And that is because this issue not only impacts the Park Place Neighborhood Association and Oregon City itself, but in fact, this LUBA decision can have far-reaching impacts throughout the state of Oregon, including the clear and objective standards issue that relates to land use applications that include housing, but also issues related to traffic impacts and connectivity, which in fact LUBA didn't even reach in its decision, but perhaps the Court of Appeals would on appeal. So I see that I'm almost out of time, but well, actually I don't. How much time did I have?
You're representing the neighborhood association, you get 5 minutes.
I see, okay. Well, I don't have a lot more to say other than there are going to be some more members coming from the Park Place Neighborhood Association after me. I imagine they'll be saying similar things, but please consider, take a hard look at appealing this. And I don't have the authority at this point to commit one way or another, but I'm pretty sure the Neighborhood Association will be looking forward to supporting the city in the event you take that approach. Thank you.
I'm going to ask that question, so thank you for attempting to answer that. I guess before you go, I would like to ask, you mentioned the implications, and obviously you went to argue LUBA with unfortunately the short time frame that everybody had to crunch their time into one thing. Do you see any fatal flaws in an appeal?
I'm not sure I understand your question. Do I think that an appeal would be doomed to failure? I do not. No, there are certainly multiple aspects that could be appealed, not the least of which is that LUBA wasn't entirely clear in some of its reasoning in several respects. So there's also some statutory interpretation issues. So this is anything but, this would be anything but a frivolous appeal. The only reasons that my clients are here to urge the city to take this on as the lead, really appellant, is because the city has quite a bit more resources than the neighborhood association. It has highly experienced land use attorneys on staff that have been doing this longer than I have and are much more accomplished in this area. So we're just suggesting that this would be a great team effort and the city should lead the way for this very meritorious appeal.
Any questions? Linda? Again, thank you for your patience. We needed to get information about what was going on with this case.
Of course. And you guys all know it's really hard to hear you.
Yes.
It's hard to hear Mr. Kabaisi.
We're aware
It's hard
of that.
to hear
Yes, we're
Frank.
aware, but we do have some devices, don't we?
I've used them in the past. They're not very good.
Okay.
All right. Linda Van Haverbeek, Oregon City, Park Place neighborhood. I urge you to appeal this Park Place crossing land use issue. The Park Place neighborhood itself has worked on giving unreasoned growth in many ways, including the Park Place concept plan, listening to ICON when they had their initial presentation, attending, commenting, suggesting ideas at many Planning Commission hearings. We have appealed to you and the Planning Commission decision. We appealed to LUBA. We've done all that we can do with our limited resources. This commission represents all the citizens of this city. The Park Place neighbors will have to live with the decisions that are made, which will involve roads and no bridges and not living with the Park Place concept plan most closely. Please appeal the LUBA decision.
Thank you. Jackie?
Good evening, Commissioners. Jackie Hammond-Williams, Park Place neighborhood. I'm also here to urge you to appeal the LUBA decision at the Oregon Court of Appeals. The Park Place concept plan needs to be followed. I'm not too technical. I don't understand too much about the codes not being clear and objective, but that is a subject that concerns me. We work so hard on the concept plan, and I'm wondering myself why we don't have codes that can be clear and objective and followed. This is, I think, the biggest housing development in the history of Oregon City if it was to go ahead. We were told 15 years ago that the concept plan was essential to make sure there was that north-south connector to provide safer conditions in case of a catastrophe and provide first responders access into our neighborhood and to provide connectivity to the city. So this north-south connector really resonates with me. It is so essential for our neighborhood. Since that 15 years has passed, we've had development upon development. We've got another 122 houses going in right now. The neighborhood has never protested any of this development. We understand we need houses, but this development is huge. It's going to impact our livability greatly, and we feel that the concept plan should be adhered to. Every year, the climate is drier and warmer. It's not if, but when a wildfire will come into our neighborhood. It's pretty much a given. We are the rural city interface. We're right there on the edge of the countryside. So I do think that I'm just urging you to do your best for us and for the residents of your city and to, appeal this decision from LUBA and to make sure that our concept plan that we worked so hard on is really adhered to. And I thank you.
Anybody else here to speak on this particular item? Okay. Thank you. So let's have some deliberation. Absolutely.
First of all, thank you to the neighbors for waiting and then also for being involved in this for such a long time. For me personally, I'm still in the same place where I was when we made this decision, echoing the similar concerns that were just presented to us. I know that
the mayor, myself, we've had the privilege of receiving some level of collegiate level law instruction. Definitely not in this area, for me at least, but I'd like to believe that I have a surface level knowledge, and just going through this and then also hearing from other legal professionals about just how nebulous this case is. I think if nothing else, it benefits this commission to appeal so that we can get some further clarity. And then I would also say, not just because the Park Place development affects the whole city, but the fact that we have other areas that are ripe for these same sorts of events to happen, and to think that we would be setting ourselves up to have all of the work that went into these concept plans into the trash is not something that I would be willing to support for the future of this community.
Mike?
I agree with what Commissioner Morrow said. I think it's important. It's not a guarantee that we'll get any more clarification from the Court of Appeals, but I think it's important that we try, not just because of Park Place, but also because of the two other concept plans, that we could still have time to modify and make them more clear and objective if that's what the Court of Appeals says we need to do. So I think it's important that we go ahead, not just for this one, but for the other ones as well, and for this one.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Well, I've always been on the same page. I've always felt that the first role of government is the safety of its citizens. I think that the LUBA hearing in and of itself was a disservice to all. If you looked at the mechanics of it and the 15 minutes to be divided among the parties, I know it relies upon written submittals, but and some oral arguments. I think the traffic issues cited were always key. I think the connectivity, whether you call it connectivity or the north-south, the need for the north-south road, which weighed heavily upon me in the initial position of this commission. The safety of people seeking egress from there was weighed heavily upon me. The fact that I think that LUBA made some errors, both in application of the law and in weight of the laws they applied. I think the city did establish a nexus or connectivity between the city and county standards that I think LUBA interpreted wrongly. And given those errors in the opinion itself and the failed application of laws or the misweighting of laws, it should come as to everybody as no surprise that I'm all for appeal. Thank you.
Mr. Smith?
I don't have much else to add. I agree with the comments by all the other commissioners and also support the appeal.
All right. I guess I concur. One of the things that I should note is that I've been working with the Park Place neighborhood for a very long time, and one of the issues that had been discussed in the last 30 years about this area had a lot to do with connectivity. The access to the Park Place neighborhood, even before the city was required to annex it, has always been extremely poor. I think that the most recent issue south of us with the wildfires emphasized that even more. I know that myself, I was out and about that day trying to get around Oregon City, and, I wish I'd had, the Jetsons car, because that would have made it a lot easier, or Jetsons whatever. My biggest concern stems back to the state law that preempted voter and approved annexations, because this had been discussed during the time that it was proposed to be annexed the first time, the second time, and the third time. These were issues that were brought up even then, and we're still talking about them, but there is very little recognition by the development community that those concerns exist, and those issues, physical constraints of the land that basically make some areas not as developable as others, but that does not seem to stop people. The land only has so much carrying capacity, and our concern as a community is what we are doing could cause and will cause additional problems that we cannot resolve at this time. We don't have the capability. So we are relying to some degree on those who come in to develop to help us resolve those issues. And in this case, I don't think we have had that kind of cooperation. So I will also agree with my fellow commissioners and ask for a motion.
I move that the city appeal the LUBA decision to the Court of Appeals.
Second. I think it's been seconded by all of us who did not make the motion.
For the record, I'm going to put that as Commissioner Mitchell.
Yeah.
Yes, please let the record note that.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Adam Marl.
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Mike Mitchell.
Aye.
And Mayor Denise McGriff.
Aye.
Motion passes.
And again, thank you for hanging in there. Like I said, we needed to get the information, and we look forward to further cooperation with you on this, because this is important, as was stated by one of you. It's involving the livability of our community. And it's really important that we maintain that. I had the opportunity to speak for the Clackamas County Business Alliance, and one of the things that I said was very important to this community is livability. So thank you so much. All right, let's move on to our next item, which is dealing with resolution number 2312. And we have Mr. Lassell. Excuse me, 2312 and 20, we have 8B and 8A, so 2315. So is this the place where we need to have discussion, or is it involving 8B? Because this is declaring an election to receive state revenues.
Correct, so we'll have a public hearing for both of these
Right,
separately.
okay. So let me open the public hearing regarding Resolution 2315, declaring Oregon City's election to receive state revenues. Mr. Zook.
Disappointed that they left. I thought this was the most exciting part of the evening, but
You know, not everybody understands your brilliance, so just
that's
keep
okay.
going.
This evening, this is an opportunity for the public to have input again. This will be the second time in this process where the city elects to receive state shared revenues and receives input on the possible uses, the proposed uses at this point. This resolution would allow us to participate in the program. We'll file this resolution with the state. We've held a hearing before the Budget Committee. I believe that was May 4th. And then tonight's hearing meets the second criteria. And then we will certify this with the state by July 31st. The proposed or the possible uses as described in the budget process were basically the recognition that the general fund receives about a little over $1 million over the biennium. And because it's fungible, there's no particular designation set on that. We did, of course, have modifications to the proposed budget as to how different funds were used, and that'll be in the next agenda item. But tonight's public hearing is really for the opportunity to allow the public to opine on uses of state share revenues. Otherwise, the request is that the commission approve resolution 2315 in conjunction with the resolution that was on the consent agenda, and then we will be set to receive those funds in the next biennium.
Questions, gentlemen?
None from me.
So this is basically just allowing us to receive the revenue that is owed to us.
Public comment?
Well, you're not the public, but yes.
No, I know. I'm saying you didn't ask for it.
Well, I just did. I asked if there was anybody here that wanted to talk about the state revenue sharing, and I don't have anybody that signed up, so I asked again.
I didn't hear that, so I'll make a motion.
Okay, go ahead.
I move we adopt resolution 23-15 declaring Oregon City's election to receive state revenues.
Second.
Roll call.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Adam Marl.
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Mike Mitchell.
Aye.
And Mayor Denise McGriff.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, so on to the next one, which is item 9B, and that is Resolution 2312, and that involves the budget. So, Bob, are you back? Oh, Bob's here, okay. So this is, oh, I forgot to close the public hearing on that one. So let's open the public hearing on Resolution 2312. Are you giving a report?
So this evening, we're presenting to you the on May 18th, assessed value for fiscal years 23, 24, 25. This resolution as presented would, sorry.
It's okay.
This resolution would do a couple things. One, we were required to publish for the public in the newspaper the approved budget. The approved budget, as the staff report indicates, we did that at the fourth meeting at 9:50 p.m. with a little break. We came up with a number, the budget committee spoke that into the resolution. We had a couple overstatements on that we caught after basically the next day. And so we printed the approved budget with the errant items, and because that's required by state law, we talked to the Department of Revenue, and they indicated that you go ahead and publish the approved budget as was spoken into by the budget committee, but then when the commission adopts the budget, we can make those adjustments. And those three adjustments were basically pertaining to, there was a reduction of 6 months worth of salary in the assistant city manager position of $125,000 and associated internal service charges that are, associated with that. That's a pretty complex calculation and affects all funds. We did not speak that amount correctly into the approval process. The second one is $120,000. We actually doubled the transfer out from the library to the general fund. We had spoken into through the committee that they wanted to increase that transfer, as we heard from Mr. Goldberg this evening as well. And so we actually doubled it, and so now there's a reduction of 120. And then the third item is removal of the biennial budget activity that was basically doubled up when the Parks Donations Fund was created. We spoke about having a separate fund for the Parks Donations. Well, we didn't remove the Parks Donations Fund from the general fund in the calculation of, so we actually double counted the Parks Donations amount. So the resolution as it's presented builds those corrections in and basically meets the intent of the budget committee. And so there's some detail in the staff report, but that's our staff report for this evening. And then if there's other changes that the commission would like to make, we can go from there. So,
Bob, I know you wanted to make some comments, so come on up.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Bob LaSalle, and I'm the chair of the Citizens Involvement Committee. I don't have much to add to what you already have. The CIC recognizes the concern of relying on only one means of communication with the citizens. However, as I've said before, the postcards remain the only true way to reach all the households in Oregon City. At Monday's CIC meeting,
Possible means of communications were passed on to the members, such as school newsletters, local bulletin boards, A-frame signs, churches, utility bill stuffers, Facebook, email lists, and Instagram. And I gave all of them a list of all the Oregon City schools with their phone numbers and addresses, and encouraged them to contact them. Of course, this is the end of the school year, so that'll probably won't happen until next fall. I also gave them a list of the Oregon City churches, which is a big, long list. This is, you can't see it, but that's real small writing. So there's a lot of churches in Oregon City, and this actually is only a list of the Christian churches in Oregon City. So if they take the initiative to talk with their churches, why they might be able to get things on their bulletin boards and whatnot.
So I guess that my question for you, this is not going to subtract from your time. So you put this together to get people to send information to the schools and to the churches, and
It was, I gave them that information so they would take the initiative, each neighbor would take the initiative to use that means of communication to reach out to the citizens in their areas.
Yeah. I like the idea. There are many churches in my neighborhood, and I will say that about 3/4 of them, the people who go there, they don't live in Oregon City. They're coming from elsewhere.
Oh,
You know, two of them for sure. I mean, they may live in Oregon City, but, they don't live in the McLaughlin neighborhood. They're coming in, they're going out.
Sure.
And that's kind of what's been happening.
Well, it's like,
these days.
it's
But,
the
it
same
won't
as,
hurt to put it on their bulletin board.
it's the same as using email.
Yeah.
You can only get to a certain percentage
I know.
of the citizens.
Yeah.
But at least we're trying to think of ways to reach out to them. I've made the claim that the CIC is not receiving any more money. And I'm going to ask you to look at the budget spreadsheet that shows the budget of 2022-23. And the fourth line shows the yearly allocation for each neighborhood association. And as I've stated, that line adds up to $29,687, or a total biennium of $59,374. We're being offered $60,000 for the biennium. Not much of a help there. It's been said that the neighborhood association mailing costs are subtracted from the yearly allocation of $26,000, but that's not true. If you look, for example, on the Elyville column there, let's see here. There are 3 mailings, total cost of $2,640.45, and deduct that from their yearly allocation of $3,227.10, and you get the balance listed there of $586.65. Now that's being deducted from the $59,000 figure, not from that the $30,000 per year, not the $26,000 that it has listed. Now what this proves is simply that we have not been given any kind of a raise in funding. We haven't received anything. Now, to make it very, very clear, what we're asking for is a biennium budget of $84,911, which allows us simply to break even. That's an increase of $24,911 for the biennium. And surely by looking at the sheet that I provided you, which lists the possible sources of funding, you can find an additional $12,466 per year to support your neighbors. Now, on that other spreadsheet, budget from 2018, 2019, if you remember, there was a $5,000 carryover figure, which we could have used for any number of things. That disappeared. There is no carryover anymore whatsoever. So what we're asking for is an additional $4,246 per year to be put into that carryover fund, which is actually less than was taken away from us. I hope I made it clear tonight what we're asking for.
I think you have to a point, but I think that you misunderstand. The way that the money goes for the neighborhood associations, it's a lump sum. It's not divided up by neighborhood. This chart that you were looking at is expenditures for newsletters. That's not the budget. The budget is the amount that's in the budget, and then as the funds are requested and spent, they're drawn down. But there's not a column for Ely, there's not a column for McLaughlin. That doesn't exist in our budget.
I realize that.
So the way that you have this laid out is how much these neighborhoods are spending, and I went through this again very thoroughly. And I think that I really feel that there's a misunderstanding. So my understanding from our budget folks is that the neighborhood associations have not ever expended all the money that's in the budget. There's always been some left over. And so there's plenty of money to be used under what was already allocated under the current budget right now. And if there was money that was more money was needed, basically talk to our fearless leader, and basically it's not like you're running a deficit. So I'm trying to reconcile in my own head the request with the fact that that the neighborhoods are not spending all their money. I mean, and again, it's not allocated by neighborhood associations. So you've put together a lot of information that I can't match up with the rest of the budget. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Mayor, I talked to you
I know, and
a while back, and I explained that
you submitted.
when I approached the budget committee, I tried to give a minimum amount of information because I didn't want to overburden them. And you told me at the time, the more the better.
Yes.
So that's why I provided all that information
But it's
that
not
you have.
accurate based
The
on the
fact of
budget,
the matter
though.
is,
That's what I'm having a problem with. I can't reconcile the numbers with the, you've got this allocated by the amount in the budget to each neighborhood association, and that's not how it's done. And maybe they can explain it better than I can. That's where I'm having the problem, trying to match up all the stuff you put together with, the money that's being spent. So I'm trying to understand how come let's say, you guys have $5, and at the end of the year, there's still $2 left, so to speak. So I'm trying to understand that. That's where I was about 3 hours ago when I was looking at this again, because I reviewed everything that you sent, and I looked at the stuff you submitted to the budget committee, and then I asked the question, is the budget for the CIC split up by neighborhood associations? And the answer was no.
the only reason that we haven't spent all the money is because not all of the neighborhood associations have been active. I've been working hard to get the inactive ones reactivated,
But even if they all were
as I told
active,
you
you still
before.
running
When I
a balance.
assumed the chairmanship of the CIC, there were 7 active neighborhood associations. There are now 10. We're very close to getting an 11th and working hard on the 12th. So these figures are based on 12 active neighborhood associations. And the figures that I gave you would allow those 12 neighborhoods to break even.
And I don't understand the break even. Matt, can you help us out here?
Well, I was hoping to get more clarification. We had a good conversation about this on Monday at the CIC, but still I'm having a hard time understanding where this carryover, what that is and how that factors into how Mr. LaSalle was able to get to the 29,600 figure that was referenced, because I want to be able to understand that.
This is not a document that we use for budgeting purposes. So you're referencing, it looks like from 2000, it looks like a 2018, 2019 document that had a line item called carryover. I can't explain what that is. I don't know what that is. At that point, we were in a biennial budget. When the commission allocates money over the biennial budget, there are times we spend, if it was 30,000 and 30,000, sometimes we spend more than 30,000 in the first year. Sometimes we don't spend any of it in the first year, we spend it in the second year. So I guess without diving deep into reconciling this with what we have budgeted versus activity going back to 2017, I can't really give you a good answer of what carryover is. Going through the budget committee process, you're probably aware, in our budgets for our departments, if there's money left over, unless it's allocated for vehicles or equipment or building maintenance, if community development has $50,000 left over at the end of the fiscal year, we don't start them with a carryover. So that's why I'm not sure what this is. We would start over and reallocate funds based on the new request for the new biennium. So I'm sorry, I just don't have an answer for you exactly what carryover means in this spreadsheet that was submitted.
So what happens, so you just said, let's say, for example, there's $50,000 left in the community development budget at the end of the biennium. What happens to the $50,000? It just goes back to the general fund?
It goes back into the general fund, gets reallocated as part of the budget process for the new biennium.
Okay, all right, got it.
We don't have every department that receives general fund, if they don't spend their money, doesn't just keep it and build it up. Unless, like I said, it's allocated to something specifically like equipment reserve or building maintenance or a project that's gone over the artificial June 30th, July 1 date.
So am I correct in the fact that we have one line item for the CIC and all the allocations for all the funding requests for newsletters or whatever it is comes out of that pot?
That's my understanding, yes.
There's not a neighborhood list and everybody gets this amount, let's say it's, what do we have, 10? So let's say it's, $100 per neighborhood, so it's just not divided up like that.
Not the way our budget is adopted, no.
Okay.
There was $52,000 in the existing budget, so $26,000 per year. Now, whether more got used in one year or the next, we don't really, we track it over the biennium. And the approved budget was an increase of $4,000 a year, so it brought it up to $60,000. And going back to 2017, that was the largest year that we saw activity, was about just over $25,000 spent. Had several years, and I think obviously this is COVID impacted, of 10,000, 11,000, 13,000, 11,000 not spent. But like I said, I think a lot of that was COVID and getting things kind of back to normal. I think it's important to note, if 30,000 is wrong, or 60,000 over the biennium, the communications manager with the CIC representative, we're going to track that and we'll address it. But really it's up to the commission. If you want to allocate additional funds, we'll work with the finance director to make that happen.
So have we, with the exception of including the COVID years, we've been running, they've not spent all the money.
Not based on what we have budgeted versus actual activity from the audited budgets.
A quick question first for Mr. Zook. I want to make sure with the items that you mentioned in your report, kind of correcting what happened. So on the bottom of page 2 of the staff report, the contingency, if we were to adopt the budget the way you presented it, is round numbers, $200,000 greater than what the budget committee recommended, right?
Yes.
Okay. And I know there's a concern because I know that contingency amount is not what frugally is not the right word I'm looking for.
Frugally is fine.
But that you would like to see more in that, but there is 200,000. So I'm going to suggest, just to start a discussion, current biennium allocation to the CIC is $52,000.
60.
No, the current.
Oh, right now?
Right now, today.
Correct.
52.
Correct.
You've proposed 60,000 in the budget.
Correct.
I'm going to suggest we increase that to 72,000, an additional 20%, just to start a discussion.
Based on what?
Based on, I'm going to guess that the post office will probably raise rates.
Oh, yes.
Again.
Yeah, it will.
The cost of printing in paper is probably going to go up. And hopefully we get some more of the neighborhood associations online. And I know it's something that it's not that much money and we could correct it at an additional point, but I think the neighborhood associations and the CIC play an important role, and I think a little upfront isn't, I think would be good. I'd throw it out there just for discussion.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree that the CIC needs more. I said that when we had our meeting. And I explained at our CIC meeting on Monday that I think from the beginning, there was a disconnect. The original ask was hard for our budget committee to determine what dollar figure was being asked of. And going back and watching the budget committee meeting, the original ask was different from what was asked tonight. And so I think the sticker shock there contributed. I also noted that the increased scrutiny from this commission on how that money is spent has arisen because of a postcard that was sent out that included political information, which in my opinion ought to be refunded to the city, by the way. And so I explained to them all of these things are the umbrella over this entire conversation that we're having. And so while I do support an increase in the budget, and I have a hard time with the narrative that there's no increase in the proposed budget, because I believe there is, I also hope that this pushes our neighborhood associations to be more creative with their communications. I understand that the postcards are the only way to reach every household, but if we're looking at broadening the base of the people that we're wanting to show up, if we're wanting more young people, if we're wanting a more diverse crowd, we need to be looking at other modes of communication without just simply saying, it hasn't worked for us before, so it's never going to work again. And so I know that we've got a talented communications team. We have a dedicated community engagement specialist that just started this last biennium. And so I'm interested to hear where we're going to look at taking if we're going to increase this budget allocation. But I hope that regardless of whatever is allocated, I'm looking forward to having some conversations with Bob and with Jared and with Emma and Tony about how we can work together to be more efficient in the ways that we communicate to our neighbors. Because as time goes on, it can't just be postcards. It has to be a multifaceted approach. Not to say that postcards aren't going to play a role in that. But as with any marketing campaign, you're not just going to go at it from one angle. And so I hope that this pushes that conversation.
Rocky?
I don't have any problem supporting the idea of Commissioner Mitchell, or the increase.
You're saying 6,000 for each biennium, for each of the 2 years?
Yeah, I was suggesting 12,000 for the biennium additional, which would come from that contingency, which is now 200,000 higher than we thought it was.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Well, I feel that based on the historical data, and me being conservative as I am, I'm not anxious to do that tonight, but I would say that if in the course of the future events, if their budget appeared to be depleted and in need of additional funding, then we could move at that time to give it to them. So I'm not against it. I just don't feel doing it at this moment is necessary. And, I won't even get into how effective our means of communication are because that's a whole other discussion. So that's where I'm at on the money. And it's not a lot of money. It's just a principle that as the fund is depleted, if we see we're in 18 and 24 months and we're down to approaching zero, then freshen up the fund. Do it at that point.
So what would happen, Mr. Conkle, if we got down to, let's say, some unreasonable number? We would never let it get to zero, so obviously. So what would we do if more money was needed?
Ask, and then we would allocate the money to that line item. If we had a surplus in another line item, we're talking such small dollars, I probably wouldn't bring this as a supplemental budget item.
Yeah,
Is it a budget
we would
amendment?
probably make the adjustment, and
Right.
then as you recall, we've brought supplemental
Right,
budget
supplemental
adjustments. I mean, we're talking,
Right.
let's even say it was $20,000, right? I mean, that's nothing, that's not nothing, I'm sorry. And relative to the size of the budget,
Right.
that's an adjustment that we could make at the staff level and then bring as a supplemental budget adjustment as we move through the year.
If necessary, if it was
At any
required.
point in time over the next 2 years, we
Yeah.
could do that
Yes.
rather than start amending
It's
the
within,
budget
remember, it's
tonight.
within one larger fund.
Right.
And we can allocate those funds within that
Yeah.
fund itself. Yeah.
Like I said, I think using these newsletter numbers that's not the budget. And, having been the newsletter editor of my neighborhood, I would track this, but it wasn't the budget that we were using to say, oh, this is how much money, because we don't have the money. It was not allocated to a specific area. It was, yes, this neighborhood is using this much because there's this many people in there, and it looks like we're running a deficit. Some of these look like they're running a deficit, but they're not really running a deficit because that's not the budget. That's just how much been spent on the newsletters or whatever people are putting out.
I think it's running a deficit based on a formula that's applied to try to
right.
be equitable across
Right.
all neighborhoods.
Right.
Realizing at the same time, all neighborhoods don't exactly operate or not operate, notice or send out
Right. Some do
mailings
4
at the
times a
same
year,
rate.
some do 6 times a year, some do 1, it's, again, so like I said, I am, having served on the CIC, having served on the state CIC, I have been in this business in the whole thing with citizen involvement for years. I don't think it's the emergency that you think it is, Bob. And you just heard him say that if we get down to a certain point, we move some more money over. It's not like you don't have any, like the CIC doesn't have any money. It's there.
I would just say that if we were investing in something else that had as poor of a success rate as the postcards have had, I think there would be a lot of upset citizens. And so, again, what I'm saying is that postcards absolutely have to be a part of that formula. But with this being a coordinated marketing strategy, if you will, it needs to be multifaceted. We have professionals who are here to help. This is part of what I do for a living, and learning about how technology is changing isn't something, up until COVID and even through COVID, it isn't something that I think that neighborhood associations were prepared to deal with as we should have been. And so hopefully this is that opportunity for us to be able to have that. And it's my understanding, because I see it on my feed all the time, that the city does those boosted posts on Facebook pretty frequently. And it's something that when you compare it to the rising costs of materials and postage, is actually really cheap to do. So that's just what I wanted to put out there.
Okay, well, you made a suggestion. Is there anybody wants to make a motion? Or do we want to go with Commissioner O'Donnell's suggestion based on staff's, recommendation that That, you know, if it's $20,000, we can move the money.
I'm fine with that approach. I brought it up just to have the discussion.
See, I feel for the motion I make is pass the budget as presented for this evening with the notation that if the CIC needs additional monies in the course of the biennium, they be so supplied.
So I'm going to ask you for one last comment before we get the motion. Do you understand that we have the ability to add more money to this budget?
This is the first time anybody has ever told me that that would be an option.
Well, I can.
So what can I say? I appreciate that information, but when I put my hours and hours and hours into trying to present you with a budget that was acceptable, I didn't have that information. And I think that's a failure on somebody's communication with me as the CIC chair, putting all those hours into trying to justify something to you as the city commissioners. I think that's a real serious failure in communications, and I'm upset about that, but I'm happy to understand that we do have the ability to come back to you to get additional funding as necessary. I'm sure we will.
The group has always had that ability, Bob.
But I will say one more thing, just one more thing.
Yeah.
Is I'll remind you that 15 years ago, the budget for the CIC was $25,000 a year. Last year, it was $26,000. 15 years, $1,000. Postage, additional homes, what can I say? But thank you for your consideration, and I'm glad to hear that we will at least have an opportunity to come back again when we run short of money, and hopefully we'll be able to get those inactive neighborhoods back up and running.
I thought there was a claim that it was $30,000 a year, in effect.
Pardon?
I thought there was a claim that in effect it was $30,000 a year with the carryover that you had mentioned.
Which doesn't make sense.
But
Well,
again,
I'm talking about last year,
Last year,
26,000.
yeah. Again, I am sorry that if you misunderstood, because at the beginning of, not this year, but last year, there was a lot of discussion about the budget. This was before you were the chair. And so it wasn't last year, it was before you were the chair. And it was made clear by staff that there was the ability to ask for more money. So sometime between your tenure and last chair, that got lost in translation, because Christina has told that to me. And so it wasn't anything I needed, you know, as a community member, it wasn't anything I needed to worry about. That if there was money available. So somehow that didn't get communicated, which is why, again, I was completely confused at the budget meeting when you came up with all of this stuff, because I couldn't make it match up with the budget. That's what I said to you. I couldn't make it match up with the budget. It was like I had apples over here and I had watermelons, and I was like, okay, I don't know where these numbers are coming from. And I tried to reconcile that with what the budget had, and I couldn't make it fit. That's why I said to you I didn't understand.
Well, tonight, Christina told me that we could come back to you, and just in normal passing conversation we had before the meeting. That's truly the first time I heard about that, but then it was been confirmed now with the city manager and with you that we can come back for more money, which kind of relieves me, because if all the neighbors are active, which I hope to get them up there, then my figures would be true as far as a break even, historic.
Yeah, we will. Just one more second.
Expenditure of funds.
I think it would be really helpful to have staff come to the next meeting and explain about the fact that it's a lump sum, that it's not allocated by neighborhood association, and that CIC can make a request if they need more funds. To me, it's that simple.
Yeah, well, it's a lump sum to you, but what we have to do as neighborhoods is use the figures that I've given you. You know that spreadsheet, we've got so much per neighborhood, okay, so we've got to try to
But you
fit our
don't.
budget.
Like, that's what I'm trying to tell you, you don't. So you're confusing the issue, so we'll talk about it more offline. So can I have a motion to adopt the budget?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 23-12, adopting the budget, making
Hang on just a second.
appropriation.
Let me close the public hearing.
Motion to adopt resolution number 23-12, adopting the budget, making appropriations, imposing taxes, and categorizing taxes for the 2023-2025 biennium with corrections as presented in the staff report tonight.
Second.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Adamaro.
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Mike Mitchell.
Aye.
And Mayor Denise McGriff.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right. Communications.
I do not have any tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Commissioners. Yes, sir.
I know it's been a long night, so I'll try to be quick, but this last weekend, we had our Clackamas County Coordinating Committee C4 retreat, which I actually felt was really positive and successful. There was pretty much representation from every city, as well as transit providers and other governmental entities within Clackamas County. And the two areas of focus were housing and homelessness on one day, and then the next day was tolling. And so there wasn't too much I had to say at the homelessness evening, apart from a simple statement, which was that Oregon City is not going to be the repository for every other city's homeless issues. There were suggestions from some leaders in other communities that we create a dashboard talking about how strategies that certain cities use so that we can learn from it. And basically, I had to jump in and say that if we do something like that, it has to be an educational forum. It cannot be used as a directory for jurisdictions to shirk their responsibilities and say, oh, this jurisdiction has these resources, we're sending them there. And so I made that clear. And after we took a break for a snack or whatever, I had some people come up to me and say, you know, I never thought of it that way. And I appreciate hearing that perspective. And so hopefully having a little bit of a stern pushback during that section was enough to at least have certain members of other jurisdictions realizing that Oregon City is in fact bearing the brunt of this issue when it's not fair to our residents and it's not fair to the homeless people who are being shipped out of their communities to come to Oregon City. And then the second thing we talked about was the tolling issue, which, as we know, is on pause, which whatever that means. And what I will say is most telling is that we had ODOT there, and they did not concede that it was a pause. They did not. They said we do not call it a pause.
What do they call it?
What is it?
So, well, we're still moving full steam ahead, right? Except for the
correct.
Yeah.
And so, this being another issue where Oregon City bears the brunt of the consequences, I had a warning for my colleagues, which, given that this is where my professional comes into my elected capacity here, I don't want any of us to be resting on our laurels with this pause. Make no mistake, it was pushed out until after the next election because the governor realizes that members of her party in vulnerable swing seats in Clackamas County need to have the political cover. So let's make that very clear, that this pause is not a win. I think actually can be a loss in some ways because I think people may fall into the belief that this is over and the momentum is gone. So I made that warning. I'm going to make it here as well, that we should not be under any other, we should not believe that this is anything other than a political play that's going to help in the next election. And so We did get to hear from ODOT about what they're planning to do. It did not seem like it was any different than before.
It won't be.
They did say that as part of the direction from the governor, that they're going to be starting to involve local communities. And we all,
What a great idea.
and we all just kind of looked at each other because the presenter from ODOT was on Zoom, and we're like, that seems like a great idea. So I will be sure to keep you all updated as to how that actually plays out. At least as it happened this last weekend, it didn't seem all too different. Again, this is not a pause to ODOT, so we're gonna stay vigilant.
Can I echo that? As I said, I spoke at the Clackamas County Business Alliance, and they said, you know, what are your challenges? I said, the challenge will be to get our state agency to really listen instead of moving down the road like they're continuing to do. I said the very same thing. I said, this is not a pause. So I said, don't be under any illusion or delusion that ODOT is going to change their ways, because they are not. And I said, we all have to stay vigilant, and I will continue at any meetings that I am at to talk about this, to bring this to the fore. And I said, you know, I got asked a question about whether or not we might sue, and I said, well, we might, or we might not.
And that also reminds me that, fortunately, this was not just a forum for us to complain. We actually did talk about action items that we want to see. And so one thing that may be coming to us soon, and to cities across the county and as well as the county commissioners, is a value statement, which doesn't necessarily change the way we interact with ODOT, but it does change the way we interact with other cities. One of my big concerns on tolling is that ODOT will try and appease jurisdictions by offering money for projects in our communities that should have been taken care of decades ago, but are being offered as a way to appease these communities. And so another point I made is that if we are to make a declaration of sentiments or something like that about where we as cities and local governments stand on this issue, it has to include something that we are not going to fall for the bait and switch and allow one city to say, you know what, we do need this project from ODOT, we'll stand down, because that breaks down every other form of unity that we've had thus far that made it possible for this pause to happen in the first place.
Yeah, that's what I said at the Metropolitan Mayor's Commission. I said, we cannot be bought. I've already been offered money to our city for mitigation. I said, well, you tell me, because we're between a river and a rock. So you tell me where you're going to mitigate. I said, we're not for sale. I said, so this is the bottom line. I appreciate what you said about, I talked to Trent, and I said, I hope you have a synopsis coming about some of the major key points that were agreed to at the C4 retreat, because I would like to see that. The other thing about the houselessness, homelessness issue is that, like I said before, back in 1988, our community development director at the time said the exact same thing. So that has been going on from our standpoint for 35 years. We have said, this is not our, you know, and interesting enough that at the meeting, Scott Kaiser was there from Molalla, and he talked about their building that they were going to be evicting the people from, and I said, you need to take care of your own people. I said, these are your people. Don't send them to Oregon City. So I did want to mention one more thing, is that I'm sure you've read in the paper, but much to my dismay, while I was gone, I received information about our friends at Clackamas County trying to eliminate their diversity, equity, inclusion program in their budget. And I think that is, I made a phone call to Commissioner Smith, and she called me back, and I told her that I didn't think that was a good idea, and she basically told me that, well, she moved to table it so they could have a discussion further, and I said, you're going to put us back many years if this happens. And then it just so happened that an article came out in the paper from an employee about this very issue, which was kind of interesting. And I also wanted, Braven's already gone, but I wanted to thank him for his opinion piece that he put in the Oregon City News about houselessness and homelessness, because he had some interesting facts, and I hope people read it, because it really got to the crux of some of the issues that we are facing. And it's just, again, we've got these issues, we've got this lawsuit, we've got all these other things, so we cannot, there's no rest. We have to continue to be vigilant, and we have to continue to tell the state agencies that are basically trying to, they're bull in the china shop, and tell them, no, we're not standing for this, regardless of what our fearless leader is saying on the state level. I just don't understand it. So I think we are united in where we are going. West Lynn is still with us, and I will definitely make sure that the Metropolitan Mayors Consortium is still on board for what we want, and then we have to continue to work with the league. So if there's nothing else, I think we can adjourn. Yes, please.
First, I want to,
Does this come from the Oregonian?
I don't know, where did this
I
come
think this
from?
came from the Oregonian. Yeah, Tom Henderson, yes.
Just to let everyone know, we've heard about trolleys twice tonight.
Yes.
An idea
Yeah, we have-
before its time.
Yeah, well.
Somewhere out there, I hope Eddie Alec.
Ours are gone. I mean, one of them's been scrapped as far as I know. We have a former mayor to thank for getting rid of them, so
I want to say one thing.
please say many things.
I know the average citizen doesn't pay attention, but we just went through the budget cycle. And I can tell you, it's my third time through, and it was simply the most productive budget cycle ever. Mr. Conkle did a great job leading us through and choreographing it. Mr. Zook explaining the intricacies of accounting processes and where money comes from and where it goes. But in my mind, and everyone did a good job, but in my mind, it was so successful because of the quality of our citizens that were involved in that. And I see one of them here tonight. Lori Aronellis did a great job, among others. And I look at those people like that as future commission members if we can convince them to step up. And that's it. Thank you.
And I do like your idea about having an urban renewal 101, because I was
we need it.
extremely discouraged by the lack of understanding from the Urban Renewal Budget Committee. It was just,
A majority of the committee did not understand it.
Did you think me just commenting on this is the only thing I had to say?
I did. You know what? And it is. We're done.
No, I have a few other things to say. But I feel like I need to share this with, I don't know. I can't wait to read this.
I read it already, because it's in the current.
Is this current news?
Yes, it's very current news.
It was their
The only thought was, Eddie Alec came to mind tonight with the trolleys, because he was not fond of the trolleys.
I know, and why did they vote to get rid of it?
So I may share this with him. I wanted to make a couple comments tonight. First is a person who has been a really big part of Oregon City's community and served in many different ways. And I worked with for many years on the Clackamas Heritage Partners Clackamas Heritage Partners Board passed away, and that's Jack Hammond. And so I wanted to acknowledge him for all the work that he did supporting so many things in Oregon City, but especially his work with Clackamas Heritage Partners in support of the End of Oregon Trail Interpretive Center. I also want to acknowledge that it is June, which means school is almost out, so drive safely, both kids and adults. And also, June is Pride Month, so I want to wish the LGBTQIA community in Oregon City a happy Pride.
You will be reading the resolution at our next meeting.
Okay.
It's being teed up.
Perfect.
Even as we speak.
All right, that's all.
Okay? We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.